Get rid of it. I don't want a child. 5 words that shattered one woman's world, spoken by the most dangerous man in the city. Luca DeMarco didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Power lived in his silence, in the skyline behind him, in the certainty that his world obeyed him. But Elena Cruz didn't obey. She vanished, rebuilt herself in the shadows, gave birth alone to twins he never knew existed, until 3 years later, when the past found them all. Stay until the end to see how this story unfolds. Hit like and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The marble floor was cold beneath Elena Cruz's knees. She hadn't meant to fall. Her legs had simply given out when Luca DeMarco turned away from her, his silhouette sharp against the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse. Beyond the glass, the city sprawled in glittering indifference, 60 stories below. Get rid of it. His voice was quiet, almost conversational. I don't want a child. Elena's hands pressed against her stomach, protective even then, even before she'd fully understood what was growing inside her. The pregnancy test had been positive for less than 6 hours. She'd come here thinking, what? That he would care? That the man who ruled half the city's underworld would suddenly soften? Luca, please. I'm not asking, Elena. He didn't turn around, didn't even glance at her reflection in the glass. This is a complication I don't need. You know what I do. You know what my life is. A child has no place in it. She watched his back, the perfect tailoring of his suit, the way his shoulders remained utterly relaxed, as if this conversation was no more consequential than deciding which restaurant to buy for his portfolio, as if he hadn't just ordered her to erase the life they'd created together. Their relationship, if she could even call it that, had lasted 8 months. 8 months of stolen nights, of hotel rooms where he never stayed until morning, of elaborate security measures and pseudonyms. 8 months of pretending she didn't know exactly who Luca DeMarco was, what he was. Everyone in the city knew. The legitimate businesses were just the surface. Beneath that veneer of respectability lived an empire built on fear, loyalty, and blood. His family had controlled the underworld for 3 generations. Luca had inherited that legacy at 28, after his father's death, and in the 6 years since he'd expanded it into something more efficient and more terrifying than anything that had come before. Elena had been a waitress at one of his restaurants. He'd noticed her, pursued her. She'd been 24 working 3 jobs, sending money home to her mother in Arizona. She'd known better than to fall for a man like him. She'd fallen anyway. There's an envelope on the table. Luca's reflection gestured vaguely. 50,000. It should cover everything. My attorney will arrange the rest. A good doctor, private, discreet. You'll sign paperwork afterward. Standard confidentiality agreement. Elena's vision blurred. She realized distantly that she was crying, tears cutting silent paths down her cheeks, but her voice, when it came, was steady. No. For the first time, Luca turned. His face was beautiful in the way that dangerous things often were. Sharp cheekbones, steel gray eyes, dark hair pushed back from his forehead. That face had made her feel chosen, special. She saw now what a fool she'd been. Excuse me? I said no. Elena pushed herself to her feet. Her legs shook, but she locked her knees and met his gaze. I'm not getting rid of our baby, and I don't want your money. Something flickered across his expression, surprise maybe, or annoyance. It vanished before she could name it. Elena, be reasonable. Reasonable? The word came out sharp, almost a laugh. You want me to be reasonable while you stand there and tell me to... She couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't say it out loud. Luca's jaw tightened. I'm trying to make this easier for you. For both of us. A child would ruin your life. You're 25 years old. You work 3 jobs just to survive. How exactly do you plan to raise a baby? I'll figure it out. Don't be naive. He stepped closer, and despite everything, her body still reacted to his proximity, pulse quickening, breath catching. He'd always had that effect on her. You think you'll manage? Daycare costs alone would bankrupt you, and that's assuming you could even find someone willing to watch an infant while you work 60-hour weeks. That's my problem, not yours. I'm offering you a solution. You're offering me blood money to kill our child. The words exploded out of her, echoing in the vast space. That's what this is, Luca. You can dress it up however you want, call it reasonable, call it practical, but you're asking me to choose between you and this baby, and I choose the baby." Silence crashed down between them. Through the windows, the city lights blurred and steadied, in rhythm with Elena's ragged breathing. Luca's expression had gone completely neutral. That was worse, somehow, than anger would have been. Anger she could have fought against. This blank indifference was a wall she couldn't scale. "Then we're done here." His voice could have frozen water. "I'll have Marco see you out." "Luca, if you're determined to keep it, that's your choice. But understand this, Elena. I want nothing to do with it. Or you. If you try to contact me, if you make any claims, if you so much as whisper my name in connection with this situation, my lawyers will bury you in paperwork for the rest of your life. Do you understand?" She understood. She understood that the man she'd loved, or thought she loved, had never really existed. That she'd built a fantasy around a few kind words, and the way he'd looked at her sometimes. In the dark, when he thought she was sleeping. "I understand," she whispered. Elena turned and walked toward the elevator. Her purse was still on the chair where she'd dropped it when she arrived. She collected it with shaking hands. Behind her, Luca had already turned back to the window, dismissing her as completely as if she'd never existed. The elevator descended in silence. Marco, Luca's head of security, stood in the corner, his face carefully blank. He'd been the one to bring her up to the penthouse 40 minutes ago. He'd smiled at her then, a small professional smile that suggested he knew exactly why she was there and didn't judge her for it. Now he looked straight ahead, seeing nothing. The lobby was marble and glass, sleek and cold. Elena pushed through the revolving doors and out into the October night. The air hit her like a slap, sharp with the promise of winter. She hadn't brought a coat, hadn't planned to be here long enough to need one. She started walking, away from the tower, away from the life she'd imagined might be possible. Her phone buzzed in her purse, probably Marissa, her roommate, wondering where she was. Elena ignored it. She couldn't talk to anyone right now, couldn't explain. The streets grew rougher as she walked north. Cleaner neighborhoods gave way to ones where the streetlights flickered and groups of men watched from stoops. Elena barely noticed. Her mind was spinning, trying to calculate impossible math. Her rent was $800 a month for a bedroom in a shared apartment. She made roughly $2,000 a month across her 3 jobs. Waitressing, weekend shifts at a grocery store, occasional catering gigs. That left $1,200 for food, transportation, utilities, phone, everything else. With a baby? Impossible. But she'd meant what she said to Luca. She wasn't getting rid of it. She couldn't. Not when she'd already felt the first flutter of something that might have been hope or might have been terror. The knowledge that she was growing a whole person inside her body. That she was responsible for another life. A car slowed beside her. Black sedan, tinted windows. Elena's heart lurched before she recognized the driver. Marco, Luca's security chief. The window rolled down. "Get in, Miss Cruz." "I'm fine." "This neighborhood isn't safe at night, mister. DeMarco asked me to make sure you got home." "Mr. DeMarco can go to hell." Marco's expression didn't change. "Nevertheless, please get in the car." Elena kept walking. The sedan kept pace, rolling along beside her at 2 miles an hour. After half a block, she stopped. "If I get in, will you leave me alone after that?" "Yes, ma'am." She climbed into the back seat. The interior smelled like leather and the pine air freshener hanging from the rearview mirror. Marco pulled smoothly into traffic. "Where are we going?" Elena asked after several minutes of silence. "Your apartment. 7th and Morrison, correct?" "How do you—" She stopped. Of course he knew where she lived. Luca probably had files on her, background checks, security reports. She'd been thoroughly investigated before he'd ever spoken his first word to her. The thought made her feel sick. "Miss Cruz?" Marco's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. "May I speak frankly? Does it matter if I say no?" A small smile touched his mouth. "Probably not. I've worked for the DeMarco family for 15 years. I've seen a lot of women come and go from Mr. DeMarco's life. You're the first one who ever said no to him." "Lucky me." "I mean it as a compliment. He's accustomed to getting what he wants. It's good for him to be reminded that some things can't be bought or ordered into existence." Elena stared out the window. "He doesn't want this baby." "No," Marco agreed. "He doesn't. But Mr. DeMarco is 34 years old. He's run his father's empire since he was 28. He's never had to think about legacy in personal terms, only business ones. Give him time. I don't have time. I'm pregnant now. I need to figure out how to survive now. Do you have family? Someone who could help? My mother. Elena's throat tightened. In Arizona. But she's sick. Diabetes, complications. I send her money every month. I can't ask her for help. Marco was quiet for a moment. Then, there's a clinic on the south side, St. Catherine's. They help women in difficult situations, prenatal care, resources, housing assistance sometimes. It's run by nuns, but they don't preach. They just help. Why are you telling me this? Because you seem like a good person, Miss Cruz, and good people shouldn't have to face impossible situations alone. The sedan pulled up in front of Elena's building. It was a converted warehouse, divided into cheap apartments that technically violated about 40 building codes. But the rent was affordable, and the neighbors mostly minded their own business. Elena reached for the door handle. Thank you for the ride. And the information. Miss Cruz, Marco's voice stopped her. One more thing. If Mr. DeMarco contacts you again, and he might, eventually, don't trust him. Don't believe promises he makes. Men like him, they operate in their own interest, always. I figured that out already, Elena said quietly. She climbed out of the car and didn't look back as it pulled away. The next morning, Elena called out sick from all 3 jobs. She spent the day researching St. Catherine's Clinic, prenatal vitamins, WIC programs, Medicaid eligibility. The rabbit hole went deep, and the more she learned, the more overwhelming it became. By evening, she'd made a decision. She couldn't stay in the city, rent was too high, the cost of living was impossible. And there was always the chance she'd run into Luca, or someone who knew him, or someone who might connect her baby to him. She needed to disappear. Elena opened a new browser window and started searching for small towns, places where rent was cheap and people didn't ask too many questions. Coastal areas, maybe, where tourist season might mean service jobs. She found it around midnight. Halcyon Bay. Population 8,000. 3 hours up the coast. A fishing town that survived on summer tourists and year-round locals who worked the docks or the handful of restaurants and shops. Average rent, $400 for a 1-bedroom. Average server wage, minimum plus tips, but cost of living so low it might actually work. Elena stared at the photos on the town's website. A gray beach, weathered buildings, a lighthouse. It looked like the kind of place where you could vanish into the background and no one would think twice. She made it through 1 more week in the city, worked her shifts, collected her paychecks, avoided questions from Marissa about why she'd been crying, put in notice at all 3 jobs, told her roommate she was moving back to Arizona to take care of her mother. The lie came easily, easier than the truth. She withdrew every dollar from her bank account, $3,200, her entire life savings, and bought a used car from a man on Craigslist who didn't ask why she needed to pay cash. It was a 15-year-old Honda with a dent in the passenger door and 200,000 miles on the odometer, but it ran, and that was all that mattered. On a Sunday morning in early November, Elena Cruz loaded everything she owned into the back seat and trunk, left her apartment keys on the kitchen counter, and drove north. She didn't leave a forwarding address. She didn't say goodbye to anyone except Marissa, who hugged her and made her promise to call. Elena promised. She had no intention of keeping that promise. By the time the sun set, she was halfway to Halcyon Bay. By the time it rose again, she would have a new name and a new life. And Luca DeMarco would be a memory she locked away in the darkest corner of her heart. Halcyon Bay was exactly what the photos had promised, gray, weathered, and quietly indifferent to newcomers. Elena arrived on a Monday afternoon when the sky hung low and heavy with the threat of rain. The main street ran parallel to the water, lined with buildings that looked like they'd been standing since the town was founded 100 years ago. She found a room at a weekly motel called the Tides Inn. $20 a night, clean enough, with a kitchenette that consisted of a microwave and a mini fridge. The woman at the desk, 60-something, with reading glasses on a chain, barely glanced at Elena's driver's license before handing over a key. "You staying long?" the woman asked. "I'm not sure yet. I'm looking for work." "Try the Lighthouse Diner. They're always hiring. Tourists are idiots who can't cook for themselves." This was delivered without malice, just as a statement of fact. Elena found the diner the next morning. It was a converted warehouse with windows facing the water and a menu that featured exactly what you'd expect: fish and chips, clam chowder, burgers, pancakes. The owner was a man in his 50s named Ray Patterson, who interviewed her while flipping eggs on the griddle. Experience? 5 years waitressing, good with customers, fast learner. Ray glanced at her over his shoulder. You running from something? Elena's heart stopped. Excuse me? Pretty girl, shows up in town alone, needs work immediately, paying cash for a motel room. You're either running from something or running towards something. I don't care which, as long as you show up on time and don't steal from the register. I'm not running from anything illegal, Elena said carefully. Good enough. You start tomorrow, 6 a.m. shift. Wear comfortable shoes. The job paid $8 an hour, plus tips. During the off-season, tips were thin, tourists were scarce, and locals were cheap. But Elena quickly realized that if she worked doubles and picked up every extra shift Ray offered, she could make it work. Barely. She found an apartment 2 weeks after arriving in Halcyon Bay. It was above a bait shop, 1 bedroom, with sloping floors and windows that didn't quite close all the way. The landlord was the bait shop owner, a grizzled man named Tom who asked for first and last month's rent and nothing else. Heat's electric, he said. You pay your own utilities. Don't play loud music after 10. Don't bring home strange men. We clear? Crystal. Elena moved in with a sleeping bag, a suitcase of clothes, and her rapidly dwindling savings. She bought a used futon from a thrift store, plates and utensils from the dollar store, and a space heater that rattled ominously but kept the worst of the cold at bay. By December, she was showing. Not much, just enough that she had to start wearing loose sweaters and avoiding certain angles in the bathroom mirror. She hadn't been to a doctor yet, couldn't afford it. The clinic Marco had mentioned was 3 hours south, back in the city, and she couldn't risk going back. She'd look into Medicaid, into the free clinic 1 town over, into whatever resources existed for women like her, invisible, alone, determined to survive. On Christmas Eve, Elena worked a double shift. The diner was busier than usual, families stopping in after church services, tourists passing through on their way to bigger coastal towns. She smiled and brought coffee refills and calculated percentages in her head. $17 in tips by noon, $23 by dinner, $40 total by the time Ray locked the doors at 9 p.m. You got somewhere to be? He asked, wiping down the counter. My apartment. That's not what I meant. Elena met his eyes. Ray had been kind to her in the months since she'd arrived, never prying, never judging, but watching with the quiet assessment of someone who'd seen enough of life to recognize struggle when it walked through his door. I don't have family here, she said finally. No shit. I'm asking if you're alone tonight. I'm fine alone. Ray shook his head. My wife's making too much food. Come to dinner. No arguments. Elena wanted to refuse, wanted to maintain the careful distance she'd built between herself and everyone in this town. But she was tired and lonely, and the baby was making her emotional in ways she hadn't expected. Okay, she whispered. Thank you. Ray's house was small and warm, decorated with lights and a tree that looked like it had been in the family for generations. His wife, Claire, was a round woman with kind eyes who took one look at Elena and wrapped her in a hug that felt like coming home. Dinner was ham and potatoes and green beans with pie for dessert. Claire talked about their grandchildren, who lived 2 states away and were visiting for New Year's. Ray told stories about the diner's early days. Elena sat quietly, letting the warmth and normalcy wash over her. It wasn't until they were clearing dishes that Claire said casually, "When are you due, sweetheart?" Elena's hand stilled on the plate she was holding. How did you... I've had 3 babies. I know the signs. Claire smiled gently. You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. But if you need help, doctor's visits, supplies, anything, you just ask, okay? Elena's eyes burned. Okay. That night, lying on her futon in her tiny apartment, she felt the baby move for the first time. A flutter, light as wings, just below her ribcage. She pressed her hand to her stomach and whispered into the darkness. It's just you and me, baby. But we're going to be okay. I promise. Winter hit Halcyon Bay like a fist. The storms rolled in off the ocean with a fury that shook Elena's apartment and sent rain through the gaps in the windows. She stuffed towels in the cracks and ran the space heater constantly, watching her electric bill climb. In January, she finally went to the free clinic in the next town over. The doctor was a tired-looking woman in her 40s who examined Elena with brisk efficiency. "You're about 18 weeks along," she said. "Blood pressure's a little high, but not concerning yet. Have you been taking prenatal vitamins?" "When I can afford them." The doctor's expression softened. "Wait here." She returned with a 3-month supply and a handful of pamphlets about Medicaid and WIC. "These programs exist for a reason," the doctor said. "Use them. There's no shame in needing help." Elena took the pamphlets home and filled out the applications that night. By February, she had Medicaid coverage and a WIC card that let her buy milk, eggs, cheese, and cereal. It wasn't much, but it was enough to stop the constant gnawing worry about how she'd feed herself. The baby grew. Elena's body changed in ways that amazed and terrified her. Her belly swelled, her ankles disappeared. She moved more slowly, tired more easily, but she kept working doubles when Ray would let her. "You need to take it easy," he said one afternoon when she nearly dropped a tray of dishes. "I need to save money." "For what? You're already living on nothing." "For when I can't work anymore," Elena said quietly. "I don't get maternity leave, Ray. When this baby comes, I'll be out of commission for at least a few weeks. I need a cushion." He studied her for a long moment. Then he sighed and pulled an envelope from the register. "Claire and I talked. This is for you." Inside was $500 in cash. "Ray, I can't." "You can and you will. Consider it a baby shower gift." Elena's throat closed. "Thank you. Just promise me you'll actually take some time off when the baby comes. No rushing back after 3 days." "I promise." She kept that promise for exactly 2 weeks. In March, Elena went back to the clinic for another checkup. The ultrasound technician was a young woman who chatted cheerfully while spreading cold gel across Elena's stomach. "Let's see how baby's doing," she said. "Oh, well, that's interesting." Elena's heart stuttered. "What, is something wrong?" "Wrong? No, not at all. You're having twins, sweetheart." The room tilted. "What?" "Twins. See here?" The technician pointed at the screen, where 2 distinct shapes floated in grainy black and white. "This is baby A, and this is baby B, both looking healthy, good heartbeats." Elena couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Twins. 2 babies. Twice the diapers, twice the formula, twice the cost of everything. "Do you want to know the sexes?" the technician asked. "No." The word came out automatically. "I mean, yes. Yes, tell me." "Looks like one of each, a boy and a girl." Driving back to Halcyon Bay, Elena pulled over twice to cry. Not sad tears, she wasn't sure what they were. Fear, maybe. Or wonder. Or the overwhelming knowledge that her life had just become exponentially more complicated. But underneath the fear was something else, something fierce and protective. 2 babies. 2 lives depending on her. She'd figure it out. She had to. April brought warmer weather and the first wave of summer tourists. The diner got busier. Elena's tips improved. She bought a crib from a yard sale and baby clothes from the thrift store, tiny onesies and sleepers in yellows and greens since she didn't know which baby would need which. Claire helped her set up the apartment. Together, they washed clothes in Elena's tiny sink and hung them to dry on a line strung across the living room. They assembled the crib and stocked the bathroom with diapers bought in bulk from the dollar store. "You're going to need help when they come," Claire said gently. "Twins are no joke." "I'll manage." "Elena," Claire caught her hand. "You don't have to do this alone. I can come by in the mornings. Ray can adjust your schedule. You've already done so much, and we're happy to do more. You're part of this town now, part of our family. Let us help." Elena nodded, not trusting herself to speak. See, the babies came early. It was a Saturday night in late May. Elena was closing the diner when the first contraction hit, a band of pressure that wrapped around her middle and squeezed until she couldn't breathe. She made it through closing, made it to her car, made it halfway home before the second contraction hit, harder than the first. By the time she reached her apartment, they were coming every 5 minutes. They were coming. She called Claire, who called 911, who said the nearest hospital was 40 minutes away, and did she think she could make it? No. No, she couldn't. The storm that had been threatening all evening finally broke. Rain lashed the windows. The power flickered once, twice, and died. Claire arrived with flashlights and towels and a calm competence that kept Elena from panicking. Behind her came Miriam Hale, the town's aging former midwife, who Ray had tracked down and dragged from her house. "How far apart are the contractions?" Miriam asked, setting her bag on the floor. 3 minutes. "And the hospital's 40 minutes away in good weather. We're doing this here then." Elena wanted to argue, wanted to demand they find a way to get her to proper medical care. But another contraction took the words away, and by the time it passed, Miriam was giving orders and Claire was following them, and Elena was caught in a current too strong to fight. The first baby, the boy, came at 2:17 a.m., small and furious, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that would eventually turn steel gray. He screamed immediately, tiny fists waving. "One down," Miriam said calmly. "Now, let's get his sister." The girl was quieter, too quiet. She emerged 10 minutes later, smaller than her brother, and didn't cry. Miriam worked quickly, clearing her airway, rubbing her back, breathing into her tiny mouth. Seconds stretched into eternities. Then finally, a whimper, a cough, a thin, reedy cry. "There we go," Miriam murmured. "There's my girl." Elena held them both against her chest, one in each arm, and felt something break open in her heart. They were so small, so perfect, so completely hers. "What will you name them?" Claire asked softly. Elena looked at her son, fierce and strong and already demanding attention. "Marco," she whispered. "His name is Marco." For the security chief who'd helped her when he didn't have to, who'd given her information and kindness when she'd had nothing. Then she looked at her daughter, quiet and small and still finding her breath. "Lily," she said. "Her name is Lily. For the flowers that grew in impossible places, for beauty born from struggle." "Marco and Lily," Claire repeated. "Beautiful names." The power came back on as dawn broke. Elena had lost enough blood that Miriam insisted on taking her to the hospital anyway, just to be safe. The paramedics who finally arrived pronounced both babies healthy, if small, and lectured Elena gently about the dangers of home birth. She barely heard them. She was looking at her children, her twins, her miracles, and thinking about the man 3 hours south who had told her to get rid of it, who would never know what he'd thrown away, who would never know these perfect, impossible lives. That was fine with Elena. She didn't need him. She had everything that mattered right here. The twins turned 1 month old on a Tuesday. Elena celebrated by working a double shift while Claire watched them, then coming home to find Lily screaming with colic and Marco refusing to sleep unless someone was holding him. She'd read that the first few months were the hardest. The books made it sound manageable, a phase that would pass, a challenge to overcome with patience and proper scheduling. The books were liars. Elena learned to function on 3 hours of sleep, learned to nurse one baby while bouncing the other, learned to change diapers with her eyes half closed and warm bottles one-handed while holding a crying infant against her shoulder. She went back to work after 2 weeks, not because she wanted to, but because her savings were gone and the rent was due and babies needed diapers and formula to supplement what her exhausted body could produce. "This is too soon," Claire said, watching Elena get ready for her first shift back. "You need more time to heal." "I need to pay my bills. Ray would understand." "Ray's been more than understanding. I can't keep taking advantage." Elena pulled her hair into a ponytail, wincing at the pull on her still tender scalp. Everything hurt. Her body felt like it belonged to someone else, stretched and depleted and fundamentally changed. But the twins needed her. That was all that mattered. The first month blurred into the second, then the third. Elena developed a routine born of necessity. Wake at 4:30, nurse the babies, hand them to Claire at 5:15, work the breakfast shift until 2, come home and take over while Claire went back to her own life, nurse again, nap if the twins napped, make dinner from whatever WIC provided that week, give baths, put the babies down around 8, clean the apartment, wash bottles, lay out clothes for tomorrow, collapse into bed around midnight, wake at 2 for night feedings, wake again at 4, repeat. She lost weight she couldn't afford to lose. Her hair started falling out in clumps. Postpartum hormones, the clinic doctor said. Nothing to worry about. It would grow back. Her hands developed a permanent tremor from exhaustion. But the twins thrived. Marco grew fast, hitting every milestone early, demanding attention with a persistence that would have been funny if Elena weren't so tired. Lily was quieter, more watchful, but when she smiled, rare and precious, it lit up her whole face. They had Luca's eyes. Both of them. That distinctive steel gray that looked silver in certain light. Elena tried not to think about that. By the time the twins were 4 months old, Elena had perfected the art of invisibility. She moved through Halcyon Bay like a ghost, pleasant, forgettable, never causing problems or drawing attention. The tourists who came through the diner never looked at her twice. The locals knew her as the single mother who worked too much and kept to herself. That was exactly what she needed to be. In September, Ray pulled her aside after the lunch rush. "I'm promoting you to shift manager," he said without preamble. $10 an hour, set schedule, no more doubles unless you want them. Elena stared at him. "Ray, I can't." "You can, and you will. You're the best server I've got. You show up on time, you don't steal, you don't complain. Claire thinks I'm an idiot for not doing this sooner. The other servers have been here longer. The other servers don't work as hard as you do. Don't argue with me, Elena. Just say thank you and take the raise." Her throat went tight. "Thank you." The extra $2 an hour made the difference between drowning and treading water. Not thriving, she was a long way from thriving, but surviving with slightly less terror about which bill to pay first. She started saving again. $5 here, $10 there. By October, she had enough to buy winter clothes for the twins, real winter clothes, not just thrift store finds. By November, she had enough for an emergency fund that actually deserved the name. The twins learned to roll over, then to sit up, then to pull themselves up on furniture and cruise along the couch, babbling in their own language that only they understood. Marco was fearless. He'd launch himself off the couch toward the coffee table, trusting that Elena would catch him. She always did, heart in her throat, lecturing him in English and Spanish about being careful while he giggled and tried to do it again. Lily was cautious. She'd test each movement, make sure her hands were firmly planted before shifting her weight. She'd watch Marco's crashes and learn from them, choosing safer paths, different as night and day, but inseparable. Elena couldn't imagine her life without them anymore. Couldn't remember what it had felt like to sleep through the night, or have quiet mornings, or think about anything besides feeding schedules and developmental milestones. She didn't miss her old life. That surprised her sometimes. In the rare moments she had time to think about it. She'd lost everything, her city, her friends, her freedom, her youth, the man she'd thought she loved. But she'd gained something bigger, something that made all of it worthwhile. The twins turned 1 year old in May. Claire insisted on throwing a party, just a small gathering at Ray and Claire's house with cake and presents and too much attention that made Lily hide against Elena's shoulder while Marco soaked it up. "Look at them," Claire said, watching the twins demolish their smash cakes. "A year ago you were terrified. Now look at you. You're a natural." Elena wasn't sure about that. She still felt like she was making it up as she went, hoping desperately that she didn't screw up too badly. But the twins were healthy and happy and loved. That had to count for something. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said quietly. "Yes, you could have. But I'm glad you didn't have to." Claire squeezed her hand. "Your family, Elena, don't forget that." That night, after the twins were asleep, Elena stood in their doorway and watched them breathe. Marco was sprawled on his back, arms flung wide, taking up as much space as possible even in sleep. Lily was curled on her side, clutching the stuffed rabbit Claire had given her. They looked like Luca. More and more every day. The shape of Marco's jaw, the arch of Lily's eyebrows, the way they both got quiet and watchful when strangers talked to them, assessing before deciding whether to trust. Elena wondered sometimes if Luca ever thought about her, about the baby she'd refused to get rid of, if he ever felt regret or curiosity or anything at all. Probably not. Men like him didn't waste time on roads not taken. That was fine. She didn't need him to care. She just needed him to never find them. The twins' second birthday came faster than Elena expected. Suddenly, they were talking, full sentences, questions, observations that made her laugh and cry and wonder where her babies had gone. Marco never stopped moving, never stopped talking, a whirlwind of energy and opinions. Lily was quieter but no less determined, with a stubborn streak that appeared whenever someone told her she couldn't do something. Elena had saved enough by then to move to a better apartment, still above a shop, but this one had 2 bedrooms and windows that actually closed. She painted the kids' room herself, a sunny yellow that Lily had pointed to in the paint store with absolute certainty. This one, Mama, yellow like sunshine. You sure, baby? We could do purple or blue? Yellow, Lily insisted. Marco nodded in agreement, the rare moment when the twins presented a united front. So yellow it was. Life settled into something almost comfortable. The twins started preschool 3 mornings a week at the community center. Elena worked breakfast and lunch shifts, picked them up at 1, spent afternoons at the playground or the beach. Money was still tight, but manageable. The twins had friends. Elena had a routine that didn't leave her feeling like she was constantly drowning. She should have known it couldn't last. The first sign came on a Tuesday in September, 3 weeks after the twins turned 3. Elena was closing the diner when a man in an expensive suit walked in. "Kitchen's closed," she said automatically. "I can get you coffee and pie, but that's it." The man smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "I'm not here to eat. I'm looking for someone. Maybe you can help." Something cold slithered down Elena's spine. "We get a lot of tourists. You might want to try the police station. I'm looking for Elena Cruz." She froze. The rag in her hand dripped soapy water onto the floor. "Never heard of her," she said. Her voice came out steady. "That was good. Sorry." "Really?" "Because I have information suggesting she's been living in this town for about 3 years. Working at this diner, in fact." "Then your information is wrong." The man pulled out his phone and showed her a photograph. It was her, 5 years younger, laughing at something off camera. She remembered when it was taken. Luca had taken her to some art gallery opening, one of the few times they'd been in public together. "My employer would very much like to speak with her," the man said. "If you happen to see her, tell her Luca DeMarco is looking for her, and that it would be in her best interest to make contact." He left a business card on the counter. Elena waited until his car disappeared down the street before she let herself shake. This was bad. This was very bad. She locked up the diner with trembling hands and drove straight to her apartment. The twins were asleep. Claire had put them down an hour ago and let herself out with the spare key. Elena stood in their doorway, watching them breathe, trying to slow her racing heart. Luca was looking for her. After 3 years of silence, he'd sent someone to find her. Why? What could he possibly want after all this time? She thought about running, packing up tonight, loading the twins in the car, disappearing to some other small town in some other state, starting over again with new names and new stories. But she was tired of running, tired of looking over her shoulder. And the twins were settled here, happy here. They had friends and routines and a home. She wouldn't uproot them unless she had no choice. Elena burned the business card in the sink and went to bed. She didn't sleep. The man didn't come back. Days passed, then a week, then 2. Elena started to think maybe it had been a warning shot. Luca reminding her he could find her if he wanted to, but choosing not to press the issue. She should have known better. The call came on a Friday night. Elena's phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer, but the twins were asleep and it might have been Claire or Ray or the preschool with some kind of emergency. "Hello?" "Elena." The voice was silk and steel, instantly recognizable even after 3 years. "It's been a long time." Her knees went weak. She sat down hard on the couch. "How did you get this number?" "I'm resourceful. You knew that about me." Luca's voice was exactly as she remembered, controlled, confident, utterly certain of his right to her attention. "We need to talk." "We have nothing to talk about." "I disagree. My investigator tells me some interesting things about your life in Halcyon Bay." "Twins, Elena?" "You didn't mention twins." Her blood turned to ice. "I didn't mention anything because you told me you wanted nothing to do with my baby, or me." "Babies," he corrected. "Plural, and circumstances have changed." "Nothing has changed. You made your choice 3 years ago. I made mine. We're done." "Are they mine?" Elena's hand tightened on the phone until her knuckles went white. "No. Don't lie to me. I've seen photographs. They have my eyes." "Lots of people have gray eyes. Elena." His voice dropped, taking on an edge that made her stomach clench with old fear. I'm trying to be reasonable about this. I could have shown up at your apartment, at the diner, at the preschool, where you drop off my children every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday at 9 a.m. But I'm giving you the courtesy of a conversation first. Don't make me regret that courtesy. She couldn't breathe. He knew where she lived, where the twins went to school. He'd been watching, gathering information, building a case. What do you want, Luca? I want to see them. Absolutely not. They're my children. They're my children. You gave up any claim to them when you told me to get rid of it. Remember that conversation? Get rid of it. I don't want a child. Those were your exact words. Silence on the other end. Then, I was wrong. Elena laughed, sharp and bitter. You were wrong. 3 years, Luca. 3 years of me doing this alone. Of working 2 jobs and living in a room above a bait shop and giving birth by candlelight because I couldn't afford a hospital. And now you want to see them? Now you decide you were wrong. I know I hurt you. Hurt me. Her voice cracked. You destroyed me. You looked me in the eye and told me to eliminate our child like it was a problem to be solved. Like I was a problem to be solved. And when I said no, you threatened me with lawyers and told me to never speak your name again. I'm trying to make this right. You can't make this right. There is no right. There's just me and my kids and the life we've built without you. Our kids, Luca said quietly. And I'm not asking for your permission, Elena. I'm telling you, as a courtesy, that I will be part of their lives. You can make this easy or you can make it hard. But either way, it's happening. If you come near them, I'll disappear. I'll take them somewhere you'll never find us. No, you won't. Because you've built a life there. You have friends, a job you care about, stability. You won't take that away from them just to spite me. He was right. That was the worst part. He was absolutely right. Why now? Elena whispered. Why after all this time? Luca was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, something in his voice had shifted. Less steel, more something she couldn't identify. My father had children with 3 different women. I have half-siblings I've never met. He treated all of us like assets to be deployed when useful and ignored otherwise. I swore I'd never be like him. Then you told me to get rid of our baby. I panicked. I saw my life spiraling out of my control, and I made the wrong choice. I've regretted it every day since. I don't believe you. I don't care if you believe me. I'm still coming. The line went dead. Elena sat frozen on the couch, phone clutched in her shaking hand. Across the room, the twins' bedroom door was slightly ajar. She could hear Marco's soft snoring, the rustle of Lily shifting in her sleep. Everything she'd built was about to come crashing down. She called Claire at 6 a.m. I need help, Elena said without preamble. Can you watch the twins today? Maybe tomorrow too? I need to figure some things out. Of course, honey. What's wrong? Their father found us. He's coming. Claire was silent for a long moment. Then, do you need a lawyer? I need a miracle. But miracles, Elena had learned, didn't happen to women like her. Women who made bad choices and fell for dangerous men and tried to protect their children from the consequences. She spent the weekend researching family law, parental rights. What happened when a father who'd been absent suddenly decided he wanted custody? The answer wasn't encouraging. Luca had money, resources, lawyers who could tie her up in court for years. He could prove paternity with a DNA test, could argue that he'd been kept from his children, that he deserved a relationship with them. He could take them from her. Maybe not completely, but enough. Shared custody. Visitation. His influence creeping into their lives like poison. On Monday morning, Elena dropped the twins at preschool and called the number Luca had called from. He answered on the first ring. I was wondering when you'd call back. I have conditions, Elena said. Her voice was steady even though her hands were shaking. If you want to see them, we do this my way. I'm listening. You don't just show up. You don't send your people to watch us. You don't turn their lives upside down because you suddenly developed a conscience. She took a breath. And you don't tell them who you are. Not yet. They're 3 years old, Luca. They don't need to know about your world. What do I tell them? Nothing. You're a friend of Mama's who's visiting town. That's it. And if at any point I decide this isn't working, you leave. No arguments, no lawyers, no threats. You really think you're in a position to make demands? I think if you actually care about them, If this is about more than just your ego or your legacy or whatever, then you'll agree to my terms. Because showing up and claiming ownership isn't what they need. They need stability, security, things you can't provide. Luca was quiet. Elena waited, heart hammering. Fine, he said finally. Your terms. For now. When? I'll be there Thursday. Make it Saturday. And Luca? If you bring your security team, if you make a scene, if you do anything that scares my children, I will pack up and disappear before you can file a single piece of paperwork. Are we clear? Crystal. Elena ended the call and pressed her forehead against the steering wheel. She'd just agreed to let Luca DeMarco into her children's lives. This was either the bravest or stupidest thing she'd ever done. Saturday arrived too fast. Elena spent Friday night cleaning the apartment, not because Luca deserved a clean apartment, but because she needed something to do with her hands. The twins sensed her anxiety and fed off it, fighting over toys and refusing to nap, and generally being difficult in the way only 3-year-olds could manage. Mama, why you sad? Lily asked, climbing into Elena's lap while she folded laundry. I'm not sad, baby, just tired. Uncle Ray says tired is sad for grown-ups. Elena couldn't help but smile. Uncle Ray is very smart, but I promise I'm okay. We're having a visitor tomorrow, that's all. Who? Marco demanded, abandoning his blocks. A friend of mine. His name is Mr. Luca. He's going to come say hello. Does he like trucks? Marco asked, which was his measure of all human worth. I don't know, baby. We'll ask him tomorrow. The twins lost interest and went back to their games. Elena watched them, memorizing the way they moved, the sound of their voices. After tomorrow, everything would change. She just hoped she was strong enough to survive it. Luca arrived at 10 a.m. exactly. Elena watched from the window as a black SUV pulled up, understated by his standards but still conspicuous in a town where most people drove pickups or sedans held together with prayer and duct tape. He emerged alone. That was something, at least. Elena had forgotten how physically imposing he was. 6'2", broad-shouldered, moving with the controlled grace of someone who'd trained in violence and learned to mask it under expensive tailoring. Today he wore jeans and a sweater, his version of casual, but he still looked completely out of place against the weathered buildings and salt-worn streets of Halcyon Bay. She opened the door before he could knock. You're late. I'm exactly on time. I said 10. It's 10:02. Something flickered across his face. Amusement, maybe. My apologies. They stared at each other. 3 years collapsed into nothing. Elena saw the moment recognition flashed in his eyes, taking in the changes that motherhood and struggle had carved into her. She wasn't 25 anymore, wasn't soft or naive or easily impressed by wealth and power. She was a mother, and she would destroy him if he threatened her children. They're inside, she said. Remember our agreement. I remember. Elena led him up the narrow stairs to her apartment. The twins were playing in the living room, Marco building an elaborate structure out of blocks, Lily coloring with fierce concentration. They looked up when Luca entered. Elena watched it happen, watched Luca see his children for the first time, watched his face go absolutely still, every practiced expression falling away. Marco scrambled to his feet. Are you Mr. Luca? I am. Luca's voice was rough. He cleared his throat. You must be Marco. How you know my name? Your mama told me. And you're Lily? Lily had retreated behind Elena's legs, peeking out with wide gray eyes exactly like Luca's. She's shy, Elena said quietly. I understand. Luca crouched down, making himself smaller, less threatening. I like your drawing, Lily. Is that a flower? Lily nodded, still half hidden. Do you like trucks? Marco demanded, cutting straight to what mattered. Luca's mouth twitched. I don't know much about trucks. Marco's face fell. But then Luca added, maybe you could teach me? And just like that, Marco launched into an enthusiastic lecture about dump trucks versus fire trucks versus monster trucks, dragging Luca toward his collection with single-minded determination. Elena watched Luca sit on her worn carpet, listening to a 3-year-old explain the finer points of construction vehicles with absolute seriousness. Watched him nod in his right places, ask questions that made Marco light up with pride. This wasn't what she'd expected. She'd expected arrogance, demands, the cold certainty that he deserved this. Instead, he looked humbled, almost afraid to move wrong, to say the wrong thing, to shatter this fragile moment. Lily eventually crept closer, still wary, but curiosity overcoming caution. She showed him her drawing, a yellow flower with an enthusiastic number of petals. "It's beautiful," Luca said. "May I have it?" Lily considered this. Then she carefully tore the page from her coloring book and handed it to him. "Thank you, Lily. I'll keep it somewhere safe." She smiled, that rare sun-breaking through clouds smile, and Elena's heart cracked open. Because Lily didn't know. Neither of them knew. They thought this was just a nice man visiting Mama. They had no idea their whole world was about to shift. 2 hours later, after Luca had been taught everything there was to know about trucks and had admired 17 more drawings, Elena walked him back to his SUV. "You were good with them," she said. It cost her something to admit it. "They're extraordinary." "They're 3. They're mine." He said it quietly, wonder and possession tangled together. "I have children, twins, a son and a daughter." "You had a son and a daughter 3 years ago. You just didn't want them." Luca turned to face her. "I know I can't undo the past. I know saying I'm sorry doesn't fix what I did, but I'm here now, Elena, and I'm not leaving." "That's what I'm afraid of." "You really think I'd hurt them?" "I think you're Luca DeMarco. I think danger follows you everywhere you go, and I think my children are better off invisible than connected to your world." His jaw tightened. "I can protect them." "Like you protected me?" The blow landed. She saw it in the way he flinched just slightly. "When can I see them again?" he asked. Elena wanted to say never, wanted to tell him to get in his expensive car and drive back to his empire and leave them alone. But she'd seen the way Marco had grabbed his hand to show him the truck collection, the way Lily had smiled when he'd praised her drawing. "Next Saturday," she heard herself say. "Same time. And Luca? Don't make me regret this." "I won't." He drove away. Elena stood on the sidewalk until the SUV disappeared, then went back upstairs. The twins were already asking when Mr. Luca would visit again. She had no idea how to answer that, no idea how to protect them from the storm that was coming. All she knew was that the careful, invisible life she'd built was over, and she had no idea what would take its place. Luca came every Saturday for a month. Always at 10 a.m., always alone. Always careful to follow Elena's rules. No extravagant gifts, no references to his world, nothing that would make the twins question who he really was. But Elena saw the cracks forming in her carefully constructed life. Marco had started asking why Mr. Luca couldn't come more often. Lily had drawn him into every family picture she made, 4 stick figures now instead of 3. And the town had started to notice the expensive SUV that appeared like clockwork every weekend. "Who's your friend?" Ray asked one afternoon while Elena prepped for the dinner rush. His tone was casual, but his eyes were sharp. "Just someone I knew from before. He's passing through for work." "Passing through for a month straight?" Elena's hand stilled on the lettuce she was chopping. "It's complicated." "Elena." Ray set down the spatula he'd been using and turned to face her fully. "I've known you for 3 years. In that time, you've never mentioned the twins' father, never had a man around, never even gone on a date. Now suddenly this guy shows up and your kids look at him like he hung the moon? Ray, I'm not judging. I'm worried. Claire's worried. That man drives a car worth more than my house, and you're acting like it's normal for him to spend every Saturday playing trucks with 3-year-olds. He's their father." The admission came out before Elena could stop it. Ray's expression shifted. "Does he know that?" "He does now." "And what does he want?" That was the question, wasn't it? Elena had asked herself the same thing every night for the past month, watching Luca interact with the twins, trying to decipher his endgame. "I don't know," she said quietly, "but I'm trying to control it before it controls me." Ray was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You need anything? Legal help? A place to stay? Someone to run interference? You tell me. Understood?" Elena's throat tightened. "Understood." But Ray's concern proved prescient. Because the 5th Saturday, Luca didn't come alone. Elena was making breakfast when she heard the vehicles pull up. Vehicles, plural. She looked out the window and felt her blood go cold. 2 SUVs this time. Luca emerged from the first, but the second held 3 men in dark suits who fanned out with the practiced efficiency of professional security. Elena was down the stairs before Luca reached the door. "What the hell is this?" she demanded, keeping her voice low so the twins wouldn't hear. "A precaution. We had an agreement. You come alone. The agreement changed." Luca's face was grim. "There's been a development. I need to talk to you, privately." "The twins are upstairs. This can't wait." Something in his tone made Elena's stomach clench. She called up to Claire, who'd arrived early to watch the kids, then followed Luca to his SUV. Inside, the windows were tinted dark. Luca pulled out a tablet and showed her a photograph. It was Marco and Lily leaving the preschool. The photo had been taken from across the street, zoomed in enough to show their faces clearly. "Where did you get this?" Elena whispered. "It was sent to me 3 days ago, along with a message. Interesting children you have. It would be a shame if something happened to them." The world tilted. Elena gripped the edge of the seat to keep from falling. "Who sent it?" "Viktor Kozlov. He runs the Russian syndicate in the city. We've been at odds for the past year over territory disputes. Apparently he's decided to escalate." "How does he know about them?" Luca's jaw tightened. "I may have mentioned them to the wrong person at the wrong time." "You what?" "I wasn't thinking clearly. I was—" He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. "I was angry. One of my associates made a comment about family being a weakness, and I told him I had children, that they were being raised away from all this. I thought I was being careful. I wasn't." Elena couldn't breathe. "So because of your ego, because you couldn't keep your mouth shut, my babies are now targets?" "Our babies. And I'm fixing it." "Fixing it how? By bringing armed guards to our door? By making us even more visible? By making sure nothing happens to them?" Luca leaned forward, and his eyes were steel. "Kozlov sent that photo as a power play. He doesn't actually want to hurt children. It's bad for business. But he will if he thinks it gives him leverage over me. Then walk away. Tell him you were lying. Tell him they're not yours." "He won't believe that. He's already had them followed. Had you investigated?" "He knows, Elena, and the only way to keep them safe now is to make it clear that touching them means war." "War." Elena laughed, high and sharp. "You want to start a war over my children. I want to protect them. There's a difference." "There's no difference in your world. Don't you understand that? Everything you touch turns to violence. I brought them here to get away from that, and now you've dragged it right to our door." "I know." Luca's voice dropped. "I know, and I'm sorry. But we don't have time for recriminations. I need you to pack bags for you and the twins. Enough for a week, maybe 2. "Excuse me?" "There's a safe house upstate, private, secure, off the grid. I'm taking you there until I can neutralize the threat." "You're not taking us anywhere." "Elena, be reasonable. Reasonable. You show up in my life after 3 years, you expose my children to danger, and now you want me to just trust you? To let you move us like chess pieces? I'm trying to keep you alive, and I'm trying to keep them innocent. Do you understand what this will do to them? Being ripped from their homes, surrounded by guards, living in some bunker because Daddy made enemies?" Luca flinched at the word Daddy. Elena pressed her advantage. "They don't know you, Luca. Not really. You're Mr. Luca who visits on Saturdays. You're not their father. You don't get to make these decisions." "Then what do you suggest?" His voice was cold now, the warmth gone. "Because doing nothing isn't an option. Kozlov doesn't make empty threats." Elena stared at him, at the man who'd told her to get rid of it 3 years ago. Who'd thrown money at her and expected her to disappear? Who now sat here demanding she trust him with her children's lives? "I need to think," she said finally. "You have 2 hours. Then I'm moving you whether you agree or not." "You can't watch me." Luca opened the door. 2 hours, Elena. Use them wisely." He left her sitting in the SUV, heart hammering, mind spinning. Through the tinted windows, she watched him talk to his security team, giving orders in that clipped, commanding tone that probably made grown men jump to obey. She wanted to hate him, wanted to grab the twins and run and never look back. But the photograph on the tablet haunted her. Someone had watched her children, had followed them, photographed them, sent that image as a threat. The invisible life she'd built wasn't protecting them anymore. Maybe it never had. Elena climbed out of the SUV and went back to the apartment. Claire took one look at her face and said, "What happened?" "I need you to watch the twins for a few hours. Can you take them to your place?" "Of course, but I'll explain later. Please, Claire, just trust me." 20 minutes later, the twins were buckled into Claire's car, confused but excited about an unexpected playdate with Aunt Claire. Elena watched them drive away, then turned to find Luca waiting at the bottom of the stairs. 2 hours aren't up," she said. "I know, but we need to talk strategy, and I'd rather do it without little ears nearby." She let him follow her upstairs. The apartment felt too small with him in it, his presence overwhelming the space, making everything look shabby and worn by comparison. "Coffee?" she offered, because she needed something to do with her hands. "Please." They sat at her tiny kitchen table, which wobbled on uneven legs. Luca wrapped his hands around the chipped mug she gave him and didn't comment on the fact that it had a cartoon character on the side. "Tell me about Kozlov," Elena said. "Everything." So he did. Viktor Kozlov was 53, second-generation Russian mafia, with operations spanning 3 states. He'd been trying to expand into Luca's territory for 18 months, using increasingly aggressive tactics. There had been warehouse fires, intercepted shipments, associates who'd switched sides or disappeared. "I've been pushing back," Luca said. "Hard. He's losing money, losing face. This is his way of evening the score. By threatening children. By threatening what I care about." Luca met her eyes, which is exactly what I gave him when I admitted they existed. "Why did you tell anyone?" "Because I was proud." The admission came out rough. "Because for 3 years I've been going through the motions of my life, running my father's empire, making the right moves, saying the right things. And then I found you again. Found them. And for the first time since I was 28 years old, I felt something other than empty." Elena wanted to argue, wanted to throw that back in his face, remind him that he'd been the one to push her away. But she'd heard the rawness in his voice, had seen the way he looked at Marco and Lily, like they were precious beyond measure, like he was terrified of breaking them. "The safe house," she said. "Tell me about it." "It's a property I own under a shell company, rural area, 40 acres, good security. There's a main house and a guest cottage. You and the twins would have privacy. I'd be nearby but not invasive." "For how long?" "Until I can reach an understanding with Kozlov. A week, maybe 2. "And what does reach an understanding mean?" Luca was quiet for a moment. Then, "It means I make it clear that my children are off limits, that touching them means I burn his entire organization to the ground, and that I'm willing to do exactly that. More violence. Necessary violence. There's no such thing. There is in my world." Luca leaned forward. "I know you hate this. I know you wanted to keep them away from everything I am, but that's not possible anymore. The best I can do is make sure they're protected, that no one ever gets close enough to hurt them." Elena closed her eyes. She thought about the photograph, about the twins playing at preschool, unaware they'd been watched, about Viktor Kozlov and the casual cruelty of men who use children as leverage. "If we do this," she said slowly, "we do it my way. I pack our things. I tell the twins we're going on a trip, and you stay away from them until I say otherwise. They're already getting too attached, and I won't have you confusing them more. Elena, those are my terms. Take them or leave them." Luca's jaw worked. Then he nodded. "Fine, but my security team stays with you. Non-negotiable. They stay outside. I won't have armed men frightening my children." "Agreed." They stared at each other across the cheap table. Strange bedfellows, bound together by biology and circumstance and the messy reality that sometimes there were no good choices. Only less terrible ones. Elena stood. "I'll get our things packed. You can tell your team to be ready to move in 3 hours." "Thank you." "Don't thank me, Luca. This is your fault. All of it. And if anything happens to them, if this life you've dragged us into hurts my babies, I will never forgive you." "I know." She believed him. That was something, at least. Packing took longer than Elena expected. Not because she had so much, but because every item she put in the suitcases felt like a surrender. The twins' favorite pajamas, Marco's stuffed dinosaur, Lily's art supplies, all the small, ordinary things that made up their life. She called Claire and explained in the vaguest terms possible that she needed to go away for a while. Family emergency. She'd be in touch soon. Claire didn't believe her. Elena could hear it in the careful way she said, "Of course, honey. Whatever you need. Can you tell Ray I won't be at work for a bit? And that I'm sorry?" "Elena, what's really going on?" "I can't explain right now, but I promise I'll call. And Claire, thank you for everything. For these past 3 years. You saved us. You saved yourself, sweetheart. I just helped a little." When Elena picked up the twins, they were full of stories about the cookies they'd baked and the game they'd played. They didn't notice her red eyes or the way her hands shook when she buckled them into their car seats. "Mama, where are we going?" Lily asked as they pulled away from Claire's house. "We're taking a little trip, baby. An adventure." "Is Mr. Luca coming?" Marco asked hopefully. "He'll meet us there." That satisfied them. They spent the drive making up stories about what adventures they might have, completely unaware that they were fleeing from danger, that their whole world had shifted. Elena was grateful for their innocence, even as it broke her heart. The safe house was exactly as Luca described, isolated, secure, and surprisingly comfortable. The main house was a renovated farmhouse with wide porches and views of rolling hills. The guest cottage sat 100 yards away, connected by a stone path. Luca's security team had arrived first, sweeping the property and setting up perimeter monitors. Elena watched them work with growing unease. This was real. This was happening. "The cottage is yours," Luca said, carrying their suitcases inside. 3 bedrooms, full kitchen, everything you need. My team will maintain a presence, but they'll stay out of sight as much as possible. The cottage was nicer than anywhere Elena had ever lived. Hardwood floors, a fireplace, windows that looked out on gardens and woods. The twins ran from room to room, delighted by the novelty. "There's a playground out back," Luca said, "and trails through the woods that are safe to walk. You're not prisoners here, Elena. You're guests. Guests who can't leave. Guests who are being kept safe." She wanted to argue, but Marco had discovered the toy box in the living room, clearly stocked in advance, and Lily was already claiming the bedroom with the window seat. Their excitement made it impossible to maintain her anger. "How long?" she asked quietly. "I'm meeting with Kozlov tomorrow. Depending on how that goes, this could be over quickly. Or it could escalate. In which case, I'll make sure you're protected while I handle it." Handle it meaning what? Violence? War? Luca's expression hardened. "Whatever it takes." He left an hour later after making sure they had his number and showing Elena the panic button that would summon his team immediately. She watched his SUV disappear down the long driveway and felt terror and relief in equal measure. That night, she put the twins to bed in their new rooms and sat on the porch, listening to the silence. In Halcyon Bay, there had always been the sound of the ocean. Here there was just wind in the trees and the distant call of birds. She thought about calling Ray or Claire or her mother in Arizona, who she'd been lying to for 3 years about where she really was and what she was really doing. But what would she say? That she'd gotten involved with a crime boss? That she'd had his children and run away and now his enemies were threatening them? The truth sounded like a movie plot, like something that happened to other people. Not to waitresses from Arizona who just wanted to give their kids a safe, quiet life. Her phone rang. Luca's name on the screen. "We're fine," she said without preamble. "The twins are asleep. No one's tried to break in." "Good. I wanted to make sure you had everything you needed." "We're fine," she repeated. Silence on the line. Then, "Elena, I know you don't trust me. I know I destroyed that trust 3 years ago. But I need you to know I will die before I let anything happen to them. To you. Don't make promises you can't keep." "This one I can keep, I swear it." Elena closed her eyes. "What time is your meeting tomorrow?" 2 p.m. I'll call you after." "Be careful, Luca. Always." A pause. "Get some sleep. You're safe there." He hung up. Elena sat in the darkness for another hour before finally going inside. The cottage was warm and quiet, Through the open doors of the twins' bedrooms, she could see them sleeping. Marco sprawled on his back, Lily curled around her stuffed rabbit. They looked peaceful, safe. Elena prayed they'd stay that way. The next day crawled by. Elena kept the twins occupied with the toys in the cottage, with walks around the property, with baking cookies in the unfamiliar kitchen. They asked about Mr. Luca twice. She deflected both times. 2 p.m. came and went. No call. 3 p.m. Nothing. By 4, Elena was pacing, phone clutched in her hand. She kept checking the security monitors Luca had shown her, cameras showing the driveway, the perimeter of the woods. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. At 4:47, her phone rang. Luca? There's been a complication. His voice was tight, controlled in a way that suggested he was fighting not to lose control entirely. Kozlov didn't come to the meeting alone. He brought proof that he has access to the preschool. Names of teachers, schedules, photographs of the interior. Elena's knees went weak. She sat down hard on the couch. What does that mean? It means he's making it clear he can get to them anytime he wants. That moving you to the safe house doesn't matter if I don't agree to his terms. What terms? He wants me to cede 3 territories, give up operations that are worth tens of millions annually. In exchange, he leaves you and the twins alone. Then give them to him. It's not that simple. If I show weakness now, others will follow his example. I'll spend the rest of my life fighting off people trying to use you as leverage. Elena pressed her free hand to her mouth, trying not to scream. So what do we do? I'm escalating. Kozlov thinks he can threaten my children and walk away. He's wrong. Luca, please. I'll handle this, Elena. Just stay where you are. Don't let the twins out of your sight. And if anyone approaches the cottage who isn't my team, you hit that panic button. Understood? Understood. The line went dead. Elena sat frozen on the couch as the afternoon light faded to evening. Marco and Lily played with their trucks, oblivious. She watched them and thought about the preschool in Halcyon Bay, about the teachers who knew her children by name, about how easily someone could walk in during pickup time, blend in with the other parents, wait for the right moment. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she opened it. It was a video, 15 seconds long. It showed Marco and Lily on the playground at the cottage, playing just an hour ago while Elena had been inside making lunch. Someone had been watching. Someone had been close enough to film, and they'd sent it to her to make sure she knew. Elena's hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the phone. She pulled up Luca's number, but before she could call, 3 things happened simultaneously. The security alarm started blaring. Headlights appeared in the driveway, multiple vehicles, moving fast, and someone knocked on the cottage door. Elena grabbed the twins, pulling them close. Stay behind Mama, she whispered. Don't move. Through the window, she saw Luca's security team racing toward the house, weapons drawn, saw the vehicles in the driveway. Not Luca's sleek SUVs, but vans with tinted windows. The knock came again, harder this time. Ms. Cruz? A man's voice, accented, unfamiliar. Open the door, please. We just want to talk. Mama, I scared, Lily whimpered. It's okay, baby. We're okay. But they weren't okay. Elena could see it in the way Luca's security team had fanned out, outnumbered by whoever had just arrived. Could hear it in the casual confidence of the man at her door. This was Kozlov's message, his demonstration. He could reach them any time he wanted. Elena's hand found the panic button Luca had given her. She pressed it and held it down, praying he was close enough to respond, praying that 3 years of running and hiding hadn't all been for nothing. Outside, the standoff continued. Inside, Elena held her children and waited for her world to either hold together or shatter completely. She'd chosen Luca once 3 years ago when she decided to keep their baby. Now that choice had come full circle, and she had no idea if either of them would survive it. The seconds stretched into eternities. Elena held the twins against her chest, feeling their hearts hammering in rhythm with her own. Through the window, she watched Luca's security team and the newcomers face each other across 20 feet of gravel driveway, weapons visible but not raised. A standoff held together by the thinnest thread of restraint. The man at the door knocked again. Ms. Cruz, I understand you're frightened, but I promise you we mean no harm. Mr. Kozlov simply wants to deliver a message. Tell him to call, Elena said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. He prefers personal communication. It prevents misunderstandings. Mama, who's that? Marco whispered. Just someone Mama doesn't want to talk to, baby. Stay quiet for me, okay? Through the window, she saw headlights cutting through the darkness at the end of the long driveway. More vehicles. These move faster, with the urgency of people racing against time. Luca's SUV led the convoy, followed by two more black vehicles that screamed military precision. They screeched to a halt in a semicircle, blocking the vans that had brought Kozlov's men. Luca emerged before his vehicle had fully stopped. Elena had never seen him like this, every line of his body coiled with barely restrained violence, his face a mask of cold fury that made even his own security team step back. Get away from that door, he said. His voice carried across the distance, quiet but absolutely lethal. Now. The man who'd been knocking turned slowly. He was older than Elena expected, maybe 50, with graying hair and a calm expression that suggested he'd been in situations like this before and survived them. Mr. DeMarco, we were just... I know what you were doing. You were threatening my family, my children. Luca walked forward, and there was something predatory in his movement, after I explicitly told Kozlov that they were off limits. Mr. Kozlov wanted to demonstrate that your safe house isn't as safe as you believed. He demonstrated that he signed his own death warrant. The older man's composure cracked slightly. Mr. DeMarco, perhaps we should discuss this rationally. There's nothing to discuss. You have 30 seconds to get in your vehicles and leave. If you're still on this property in 31 seconds, my team has orders to open fire. You're declaring war over a simple message? I'm declaring war over the fact that you came within 50 feet of my 3-year-old children after being warned not to. Luca checked his watch. 20 seconds. Elena saw the calculation happen in the older man's eyes, saw him weigh his orders against the very real possibility that Luca wasn't bluffing. Mr. Kozlov will be disappointed, he said finally. Mr. Kozlov should have thought about that before he sent you here. 15 seconds. The man gestured to his team. They retreated to their vans with the disciplined calm of professionals, engines starting, headlights cutting through the darkness. Within moments, they were gone, taillights disappearing down the driveway. Only then did Luca's shoulders drop slightly. He turned toward the cottage, and Elena saw his mask slip, saw the fear underneath the fury. She opened the door before he could knock. Are you hurt? He asked immediately. The twins? We're fine. Scared, but fine. Luca's eyes found Marco and Lily, still clutched against Elena's sides. Something in his expression softened. Hey, you two. Everything's okay now. Why were those men here? Marco demanded. At 3 years old, he was already learning to mask fear with aggression. Elena's heart broke a little at the familiarity of it. They were confused about which house they wanted to visit, Luca said smoothly. But they're gone now. How about you guys go pick out a movie to watch while I talk to your mama? Lily shook her head, burrowing deeper against Elena. Don't want to. Lilybug, it's okay, Elena murmured. Mr. Luca and I need to have a grown-up conversation. You and Marco can watch cartoons in your room. It took another 5 minutes of coaxing before the twins reluctantly retreated to their shared room, the door left open so they could still hear Elena's voice. She turned on the TV and made sure they were settled before returning to where Luca stood in the living room, looking like he wanted to put his fist through the wall. How did they find us? Elena asked quietly. I don't know yet, but I will. Luca's jaw was tight enough to crack teeth. This property is registered under 3 layers of shell companies. Either Kozlov has better intelligence than I gave him credit for, or I have a leak in my organization. A leak. Someone told him where you were. Someone with access to information that only my inner circle has. The implications of that settled over Elena like ice water. So we're not safe here. You're not safe anywhere until I find the source and eliminate it. Luca finally looked at her directly, and the raw emotion in his eyes made her breath catch. I'm sorry. I thought I could control this. I thought I could keep you separate from my world, protect you from the consequences. I was wrong. Yes, you were. Elena crossed her arms, partly for warmth, partly to keep herself from falling apart. So what now? We keep running? We spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders, waiting for the next threat? No. The word came out flat, final. Now I end this. How? By making it clear that anyone who threatens you doesn't just face retaliation. They face annihilation. Kozlov wants a war? I'll give him one. And when it's over, there won't be enough of his organization left to fill a phone booth. Elena stared at him. You're talking about killing people. I'm talking about protecting my children. By becoming a monster? I've always been a monster, Elena. You knew that when you met me. You just chose not to see it. Luka moved to the window, looking out at his security team repositioning around the property. The only difference now is that I have something worth being monstrous for. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him there was another way, a better way, something that didn't involve violence and bloodshed. But she'd seen the video someone had sent her, Marco and Lily playing, unaware they were being watched, had heard the casual confidence in the voice of the man at her door, had lived long enough in fear to know that sometimes there were no good options, only survival. If you do this, Elena said quietly, if you start this war, there's no going back. The twins will grow up knowing their father is... She couldn't finish the sentence. A criminal? They'll know that anyway, eventually. Luka turned back to face her. But maybe they'll also know I was willing to burn the world down to keep them safe, that they mattered more than empire or legacy or anything else. They shouldn't have to know any of this. They're 3 years old, Luka. They should be worried about which toy to play with, not whether armed men are going to show up at their door. I know. His voice cracked slightly. You think I don't know that? You think I don't lie awake at night hating myself for dragging them into this? Then walk away. Tell Kozlov he wins. Give him what he wants and leave us alone. I can't. Why not? Because it won't stop with Kozlov. Luka's control finally broke, his voice rising. Don't you understand? If I show weakness now, every two-bit gangster from here to the West Coast will see you and the twins as leverage. They'll come after you to get to me. For the rest of your lives, you'll be targets. We're already targets because of you. Yes, and the only way to protect you is to make the cost of touching you so high that no one dares try. He took a breath, visibly fighting for composure. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that knowing me put you in danger, but I can't undo that now. All I can do is make sure that danger never reaches you again. Elena sank onto the couch. She thought about Halcyon Bay, about the quiet life she'd built, about Ray and Claire and the apartment above the bait shop where her biggest worry had been making rent. That life was gone. She'd known it the moment Luka walked back into her world, but she'd been trying to hold on to it anyway, trying to pretend they could exist in some middle ground between her old life and his. There was no middle ground. There never had been. How long? She asked. How long will this war take? I don't know. Weeks, maybe. A month if Kozlov is smart enough to recognize when he's beaten. And what do we do while you're out there burning his organization to the ground? You stay here. My security team will be tripled. No one gets within a mile of this property without my knowing about it. We'll be prisoners. You'll be alive. Luka crossed to where she sat and crouched down so they were eye level. I know you hate this. I know you hate me. But please, Elena, trust me one more time. Let me fix this. She looked into his steel gray eyes, the same eyes that looked back at her from Marco's and Lily's faces every day. She thought about the man who'd told her to get rid of it 3 years ago, the man who'd walked away without looking back. And she thought about the man who'd spent every Saturday for a month playing with trucks and admiring drawings, who'd looked at his children with wonder and terror and desperate love. People could change. She had to believe that, had to believe that Luka meant what he said about protecting them. Because if she didn't believe it, she had nothing left to hold on to. 1 month, Elena said. You have 1 month to end this. Bang, Elena. After that, I take the twins and disappear somewhere even you can't find us. Deal. Luka stood, pulling out his phone. I'm leaving 5 men here, the best I have. They'll work in shifts, 2 on duty, 3 resting, rotating every 8 hours. You won't see them unless there's a threat, but they'll be watching. What about you? I'll be dealing with Kozlov. And Elena? He paused at the door. Don't leave this property for any reason. Don't call anyone from your old life. Don't do anything that could give away your location. I know it's hard, but I understand. After Luca left, Elena checked on the twins. They'd fallen asleep in front of the TV, curled together on the bed like puppies. She turned off the television and covered them with a blanket, then stood in the doorway watching them breathe. They looked so small, so innocent. She'd spent 3 years trying to give them a childhood unmarred by violence and fear. 3 years of working herself to exhaustion, of lying about where they came from and who their father was, all to keep them safe. And in 1 month, Luca had undone all of it. Elena's phone buzzed, a text from a number she didn't recognize. "This is Marcus, head of your security detail. I'm positioned at the northwest corner of the property. Davis and Chen are on the south and east perimeters. You're secure. Try to get some rest." She should have felt safer knowing armed guards were watching over them. Instead, she felt trapped. But trapped and alive was better than the alternative. The next 3 days were a special kind of hell. The twins sensed something was wrong. They were too young to understand what, but old enough to pick up on Elena's tension. They were clingy and cranky, fighting with each other more than usual, asking repeatedly when they could go home. "Soon, babies," Elena promised, not knowing if it was true. Luca called twice a day, morning and evening, with updates that were maddeningly vague. "Making progress. Kozlov is feeling pressure. Should have resolution soon." Never any details. Never anything concrete enough for Elena to judge whether they were actually safer or just deeper in danger. On the 4th day, one of the security team members, Davis, a woman in her 30s with kind eyes, brought groceries and a new puzzle for the twins. "Mr. DeMarco thought they might be getting bored," she explained, handing over the bags. "That's thoughtful of him." Elena started unpacking vegetables and milk. "Davis, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How bad is it, the situation with Kozlov?" Davis hesitated. "I'm not really supposed to discuss operational details. I'm not asking for operational details. I'm asking if my children are safe." Another pause. Then Davis said quietly, "Mr. DeMarco is being very aggressive, more aggressive than I've seen him in the 5 years I've worked for him. Kozlov's people are scrambling. They didn't expect this level of response." "Is that good or bad?" "It's effective. Whether it's good depends on your definition." Davis helped put away the groceries. "For what it's worth, I've never seen Mr. DeMarco care about anything the way he cares about you and those kids. He's not just protecting assets. This is personal for him." After Davis left, Elena thought about that. Personal. As if Marco and Lily were anything other than personal. As if they were ever just assets to be protected, rather than children who needed a father. The call came on the 6th night. Elena was putting the twins to bed when her phone rang. Luca's number, but later than his usual evening check-in. "Something's happened," he said without preamble. Elena's heart stopped. "What?" "Kozlov reached out through intermediaries. He wants to meet, to negotiate terms." "That's good, right? That means he's ready to back down." "Maybe. Or it's a trap." Luca sounded exhausted. "Either way, I'm meeting him tomorrow night. Neutral location, both of us bringing minimal security. But Luca, if it's a trap, then I'll deal with it. But this might be our way out, Elena. A chance to end this without more bloodshed." "What are his terms?" "I don't know yet. That's what the meeting is for." A pause. "If something goes wrong tomorrow, Marcus has instructions. He'll get you and the twins to safety. There's money set aside, new identities prepared, everything you need to disappear." "Don't talk like that. I'm being practical. If Kozlov decides to eliminate me, you need to be ready to run." Elena gripped the phone. "Come back alive, Luca. The twins have already lost enough. They don't need to lose you too." "I'll do my best." His voice softened. "How are they?" "Scared? Confused? Marco keeps asking when we can go home. Lily barely speaks anymore." "I'm sorry." "Stop apologizing and fix it." "Yes, ma'am." After they hung up, Elena couldn't sleep. She lay awake listening to the house settle, to the twins' quiet breathing from the next room, to the sound of the security team changing shifts outside. Somewhere in the city, Luca was preparing for a meeting that could either save them or destroy everything, and all Elena could do was wait. The next day dragged. Elena tried to keep the twins occupied with the new puzzle, with baking cookies, with anything that would distract them from asking questions she couldn't answer. But they were restless, picking up on her anxiety, feeding off it. "Mama, when is Mr. Luca coming?" Marco asked for the 5th time. "I don't know, baby. I miss him." That simple statement hit Elena like a punch. Marco missed him. In just a few short months, Luca had become important enough that his absence left a hole. "I know you do, sweetheart. Maybe soon." Evening came. 7 o'clock. Luca's meeting was at 8. Elena's phone stayed silent. 8 o'clock, 8:30, 9. By 9:30, Elena was pacing. Marcus had positioned himself outside the cottage door, close enough to respond to trouble, but far enough to give the illusion of privacy. "Any word?" she asked, stepping onto the porch. "Nothing yet, ma'am, but that's not unusual. These meetings can run long." "How long?" "I've seen them go 3-4 hours." At 10:15, headlights appeared at the end of the driveway. Elena's breath caught. Single vehicle, moving fast but not frantically. Luca's SUV. He parked and emerged, and even from a distance, Elena could see the exhaustion in every line of his body. He walked like a man who'd been to war and barely made it back. Marcus intercepted him halfway to the cottage. They spoke in low voices, Luca gesturing sharply, Marcus nodding. Then Luca continued toward the cottage while Marcus retreated to give them space. "Tell me," Elena said the moment he was close enough. "It's over." Luca sank onto the porch steps like his legs wouldn't hold him anymore. Kozlov agreed to terms. "What terms?" "I cede 1 territory, the smallest of the 3 he wanted. In exchange, he leaves you and the twins alone, forever. Any violation of that agreement, and our truce ends." Elena sat beside him. "Do you trust him to keep his word?" "I trust that he's smart enough to know what happens if he doesn't. I made it very clear tonight that touching my family means I don't stop until his entire organization is dust." Luca rubbed his face. He believed me, probably because I meant every word. "So we can go home?" "Not yet. I need to make sure Kozlov follows through, that he actually pulls his people back, that there are no attempts at retaliation." Luca looked at her. "A few more days, maybe a week. Then yes, you can go back to Halcyon Bay." Relief and grief hit Elena simultaneously. Relief that the immediate danger was over. Grief that going back to Halcyon Bay didn't mean going back to the life they'd had before. That life was gone forever. "What about after?" she asked. "After we go home, what happens then?" "That's up to you." Luca's voice was careful. "I can disappear from your life again if that's what you want. Send money for the twins, make sure you're provided for, but stay away otherwise." "Is that what you want?" "What I want doesn't matter." "Answer the question, Luca." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I want to be their father, not just a stranger who visits on Saturdays. I want to teach Marco about trucks and listen to Lily talk about her drawings. I want to tuck them in at night and be there when they wake up from nightmares. I want all the normal, boring, everyday things I have no right to ask for." "You're right. You don't have a right to ask for that." Luca flinched. "But," Elena continued, "they deserve to know their father, the real version, not the man who sends money from a distance. They deserve the choice of having you in their lives. And you, what do you deserve?" Elena thought about that, about the girl she'd been at 25, falling for a dangerous man and thinking she could change him, about the woman she'd become, harder, smarter, scarred by experience, but still standing. "I deserve honesty," she said finally. "I deserve to know that if you're going to be in our lives, you're all in, no half measures, no running when it gets hard. You either commit to being their father or you stay gone." "I can do that. I can commit." "Can you?" "Because being a father isn't about the big dramatic moments, Luca. It's about showing up for the small ones. It's about sitting through 3-year-old tantrums and wiping runny noses and reading the same bedtime story 40 nights in a row. It's boring and exhausting and nothing like running an empire." "I know that." "Do you?" "Because the Luca I knew 3 years ago couldn't handle the idea of a baby disrupting his perfect life. What makes you think you can handle the reality of 2 toddlers? Luca turned to face her fully. "The Luca you knew 3 years ago was a coward who prioritized control over everything else, who saw a child as a weakness rather than a gift. I'm not that man anymore. People don't change that fast. They do when they see what they almost lost. He reached out, then stopped, hand hovering in the space between them. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking you to forget what I did. I'm just asking for a chance to prove I'm different now, that I can be the father they deserve. Elena looked at his hand suspended in the air, waiting for her permission to bridge the gap. She thought about all the nights she'd spent alone, terrified and determined, building a life out of scraps, about the moment she'd first held the twins and known she'd do anything to protect them. Luca had almost destroyed that. But he'd also, in some twisted way, made it possible. His rejection had forced her to become stronger than she'd known she could be. And now he was back, asking for what he'd once thrown away. One chance, Elena said. You get one chance, Luca. You screw this up, you hurt them, or confuse them, or let your world touch them again, and we're gone. Understood. And we do this slowly. They're already confused enough. We don't tell them you're their father until they're ready to hear it. How will we know when they're ready? We won't, but we'll figure it out together. Elena finally took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, warm and solid. This doesn't mean I forgive you. I know. And it doesn't mean I trust you. I'll earn it, however long it takes. They sat in silence, hands linked, watching the stars come out over the mountains. Inside the cottage, the twins slept peacefully, unaware that their world had just shifted again. But this time, maybe it was shifting towards something better, or at least towards something whole. They stayed at the safe house for another week. Not because they had to, Kozlov's people had pulled back, surveillance confirmed it, but because Luca insisted on being certain, on verifying that the truce would hold before exposing the twins to any potential threat. Elena used the time to watch him, to see if the man who'd promised to be a real father could actually follow through on the boring, unglamorous reality of it. The first morning after their conversation on the porch, Luca showed up at 7 a.m. with breakfast supplies and an apology for waking them early. I thought we could make pancakes, he said, holding up a bag of groceries. If that's okay. Marco and Lily were delighted. They dragged him into the kitchen, chattering about what shapes they wanted. Dinosaurs for Marco, flowers for Lily. Luca listened with the focused attention of someone taking notes for a final exam, asking clarifying questions about whether the T-Rex should have chocolate chips or blueberries. Elena watched from the doorway as he attempted to flip a pancake and sent it sailing onto the floor. Marco dissolved into giggles. Lily very seriously informed him that he needed to practice more. You're right, Luca said solemnly. I do need practice. Maybe you can teach me? By the end of breakfast, the kitchen was a disaster. Flour everywhere, syrup on surfaces that shouldn't have syrup, and 3 very satisfied people covered in various breakfast ingredients. I'll clean up, Luca offered. You made the mess. That's fair. Elena started loading the dishwasher while Luca wiped down counters with the careful precision of someone who'd probably never cleaned anything in his life. How long can you stay? As long as you'll let me. Don't you have an empire to run? Marcus can handle things for a few days. I'm exactly where I need to be. The twins demanded his attention before Elena could respond, pulling him toward the living room where they'd built an elaborate fort out of couch cushions. Luca folded his 6'2" frame into a space clearly designed for 3-year-olds and listened intently as Marco explained the fort's defensive capabilities. This became their routine. Luca would arrive early, stay through breakfast and morning playtime, leave for a few hours to handle critical business, then return for dinner and bedtime. He changed diapers badly, read stories with dramatic voices that made the twins shriek with laughter, and sat on the bathroom floor teaching Lily how to braid her doll's hair after she asked if he knew how. I don't, he admitted, but we can learn together. So they watched a tutorial on Elena's phone, Luca's large fingers fumbling with the tiny strands while Lily provided encouragement and Marco declared it boring before wandering off to play with trucks. On the 3rd day, Marco fell and scraped his knee badly enough to draw blood. He screamed for Luca before Elena could reach him. I've got you, buddy, Luca said, scooping him up. Let's get you cleaned up. He carried Marco inside while Elena grabbed the first aid kit, then knelt in front of the crying child with the same focused calm he probably used during business negotiations. Okay, this is going to sting a little, he warned, dabbing antiseptic on the scrape. But you're tough, right? Tougher than those bad guys in your cartoons? Marco nodded, tears still streaming. So we're going to count to 3, and you're going to be so brave. Ready? 1, 2. He applied the bandage on 2, and Marco yelped but didn't pull away. There, all done. You were incredibly brave. Luca ruffled his hair. How about we get ice cream to celebrate your bravery? We don't have ice cream, Elena said. Then I'll go get some. What kind does everyone want? An hour later, they were all eating ice cream on the porch. Chocolate for Marco, strawberry for Lily, vanilla for Elena, because she couldn't remember the last time she'd had a choice in anything. Luca had gotten the same as Marco, and they compared whose was melting faster. You're good at this, Elena said quietly while the twins were distracted by a butterfly. At what? Buying ice cream? At being here. At being present. She licked her spoon. I wasn't sure you could do it. Neither was I. Luca watched Marco chase the butterfly across the lawn. I keep waiting to mess up, to say the wrong thing, or do something that proves I'm as bad at this as I think I am. You're not bad at it. You're just learning. Elena set down her empty bowl. They already love you, you know. They don't have the context to understand what that means yet, but they do. And you? Elena met his eyes. I'm still figuring that out. On the 5th day, Luca's phone rang during lunch. He glanced at the screen and his expression went carefully neutral. I need to take this. I'll be right back. He stepped onto the porch. Elena could see him through the window, his posture tense, one hand running through his hair in the gesture she'd learned meant he was stressed. The call lasted 15 minutes. When he came back inside, his jaw was tight. Problem? Elena asked. Nothing I can't handle, just business. Luca. He looked at the twins, who were absorbed in coloring, then back at Elena. Kozlov is demanding a meeting. Says there's been a misunderstanding about the territory agreement. Ice slid down Elena's spine. What kind of misunderstanding? The kind where he's trying to renegotiate terms we already agreed to. It's a power play. He's testing to see if I'll bend. And will you? No. The word was final. I told him the agreement stands. If he has issues with it, he should have brought them up before we shook hands. What if he retaliates? Luca crouched down so they were eye level. He won't. He's posturing because his people are questioning why he backed down. This is him saving face. I'll handle it. How? By reminding him very clearly what happens if he breaks our truce. Luca touched her hand briefly. Trust me, this is just noise. But Elena had lived too long in fear to dismiss anything as just noise. That night, after Luca left and the twins were asleep, she found herself checking the locks 3 times, looking out the windows at the security team positions, jumping at every sound. The call came at 2 a.m. Elena grabbed her phone, heart hammering. It's handled, Luca said without preamble. Kozlov and I met an hour ago. He agreed to honor the original terms. No more renegotiation. Just like that? I brought proof of exactly how much damage I did to his organization in 6 days, and I explained that I was being merciful, that I could have done worse, much worse. His voice was cold. He understood. Luca, what did you do? What I had to. Go back to sleep, Elena. You're safe. But she couldn't sleep. She lay awake thinking about the man who made pancakes with her children and the man who destroyed organizations in 6 days, trying to reconcile the two, wondering if it was even possible. In the morning, Luca showed up with dark circles under his eyes and a bag of donuts. Peace offering, he said when Elena opened the door. I know I scared you last night. You didn't scare me. You reminded me who you are. I'm both, Elena. I'm the man who wants to be a good father, and I'm the man who will destroy anyone who threatens his family. Those things don't cancel each other out. I know. She took the donuts. That's what scares me. They didn't talk about it again, but something had shifted. Elena saw it in the way Luca was more careful around the twins, as if he was afraid his other life might contaminate them. Saw it in the way he checked his phone less, tried harder to be fully present. On the 8th day, Marcus knocked on the door with news. All surveillance reports are clean, no unusual activity, no attempts at contact, no signs of continued interest from Kozlov's people. If you want to go home, now would be the time. Home. Halcyon Bay. The apartment above the bait shop and the job at the diner and the life Elena had built from nothing. "I'll start packing," she said. The twins were excited about going home, chattering the entire drive about seeing Aunt Claire and Uncle Ray and their friends at preschool. Luca drove while Elena sat in the passenger seat, watching familiar landscapes appear as they got closer to the coast. "What happens when we get there?" she asked quietly. "That's up to you." "I need you to be more specific than that." Luca was silent for a moment. "I'd like to get an apartment in town. Something close enough that I can see the twins regularly, but not so close that I'm breathing down your neck. I'll need to travel back to the city for business, but I can work remotely most of the time." "You're moving to Halcyon Bay?" "Unless you don't want me to." Elena thought about her small town with its close-knit community and watchful eyes, about explaining to Ray and Claire who Luca really was, about the twins growing up with a father who had one foot in their world and one foot in violence. "People will ask questions," she said. "Let them. We'll tell them the truth, that I'm the twins' father, that I was absent before, and that I'm trying to be better now." "And your business?" "I'm making changes, transitioning out of the more problematic operations, focusing on the legitimate ones. It won't happen overnight, but I'm working on it." He glanced at her. "I can't erase my past, Elena, but I can build a different future." They reached Halcyon Bay as the sun was setting, painting the gray ocean gold and pink. Elena directed Luca to her building, and the familiarity of it hit her hard. The salt-worn siding, the crooked steps, the window that never quite closed all the way. Home. Claire must have been watching for them because she burst out of her house before Elena had finished unbuckling the twins. "Thank heavens you're safe," she said, wrapping Elena in a hug that smelled like vanilla and home. "We've been so worried." "I'm sorry I couldn't explain." "You don't have to explain anything. You're here. You're safe. That's what matters." Claire pulled back and looked at Luca, who was lifting Lily out of her car seat. "And you must be Mr. Luca." "Just Luca, please." "The twins' father?" "Yes, ma'am." Claire studied him with the sharp eyes of someone who'd raised 3 children and could spot bullshit from a mile away. Whatever she saw must have satisfied her because she nodded once. "Well then, Ray's got the grill going if you're hungry. Nothing fancy, just burgers and corn. We figured you might want a real meal after all that time away." Dinner at Claire and Ray's was exactly what Elena needed. Normal, warm, full of laughter and easy conversation. The twins told exaggerated stories about their vacation, making it sound like an adventure rather than hiding from criminals. Ray asked Luca careful questions about his work, and Luca gave careful answers that were technically true while avoiding anything that might alarm. After the twins fell asleep on Claire's couch, stuffed with food and worn out from playing, the adults sat on the back porch with coffee. "So," Ray said, direct as always, "you planning to stick around this time?" "Yes, sir." "Because those kids have had enough upheaval. They don't need someone coming in and out of their lives whenever it's convenient." "Ray?" Elena started, but Luca held up a hand. "He's right to ask, and the answer is yes, I'm staying. I've already put a deposit down on an apartment on Harbor Street. I start the lease next week." "What about your business in the city?" "I'll manage it remotely. I have good people who can handle day-to-day operations." Ray sipped his coffee. "Elena says you're in import-export." "Among other things." "Uh-huh." Ray's tone suggested he knew exactly what other things meant. "Well, Mr. DeMarco, let me be clear. This town takes care of its own. Elena's been part of our family for 3 years. Those kids, too. Anyone who hurts them answers to all of us." Luca met his eyes. "I appreciate that. And I give you my word. I'm here to protect them, not hurt them. Your word better be worth something." "It is." They stared at each other, and Elena saw the moment Ray made his decision. A small nod, barely perceptible, but there. "All right then. Welcome to Halcyon Bay. Fair warning, there's not much to do here except fish and gossip. Hope you're ready for both." The next few weeks were an exercise in building a new normal. Luca moved into his apartment, a small 2-bedroom on Harbor Street with a view of the water. He bought furniture, learned the layout of the town, introduced himself to neighbors with a carefully crafted story about being in consulting and working remotely. He showed up at Elena's apartment every morning for breakfast. drove the twins to preschool 3 days a week, came to dinner most evenings, read bedtime stories and helped with baths, and slowly, carefully, became part of their daily rhythm. The town noticed. Of course they did. In a place like Halcyon Bay, a stranger who stayed more than a week became a topic of conversation, but Luca handled it with the same smooth competence he probably used in boardrooms, friendly without being overly familiar, polite without revealing anything real. "People are talking," Elena mentioned one evening while they cleaned up after dinner. "Let them. They're saying you're my boyfriend, that we're getting back together." Luca's hand stilled on the dish he was washing. "Does that bother you?" "I don't know. Does it bother you?" "People can think whatever they want. I know what I am to you, the father of your children, trying to earn the right to be more." "More meaning what?" He turned to face her, and the vulnerability in his expression caught her off guard. "More meaning a partner, someone you trust, someone you might eventually care about again." He dried his hands. "I know I don't deserve that. I know I destroyed any chance I had 3 years ago. But I'm hoping, maybe, that people can change, that I can prove I'm different now." Elena had been wondering the same thing. Watching him with the twins, patient and present and genuinely trying, she'd started to see glimpses of someone she could maybe, possibly, trust again. "You're different with them," she said quietly. "With Marco and Lily. You really love them." "I do, more than I thought possible." "What about me? How do you feel about me?" The question hung between them. Luca set down the dish towel and stepped closer, but didn't touch her. "I never stopped loving you," he said. "Even when I told you to leave, even when I was too much of a coward to admit I wanted you and the baby, I loved you. I just loved my control more, my perfect, ordered life where nothing unexpected could happen." He laughed bitterly. "I was an idiot." "Yes, you were. I can't undo that. Can't take back the things I said or the way I hurt you. But I love you now, Elena. Not the memory of who you were, but who you are. This incredible woman who survived everything I put her through and came out stronger. Who built a life from nothing and raised 2 perfect children alone. Who's giving me a chance I absolutely don't deserve." Elena's eyes burned. "Don't cry," she told herself firmly. "Don't you dare cry." She cried anyway. Luca pulled her into his arms, and for the first time in 3 years, Elena let herself lean on someone. Let herself be held and comforted and weak for just a moment. "I'm so angry at you," she whispered against his chest. "I know. For what you did. For what you said. For all the nights I spent alone and scared. I know. But I'm also grateful, because if you hadn't pushed me away, I wouldn't have become this person. I wouldn't have learned how strong I could be." Luca's arms tightened around her. "I'm sorry. For all of it. I'm so sorry." They stood like that for a long time, while the twins played in the next room and the evening light faded to darkness outside. When they finally pulled apart, Elena wiped her eyes and said, "I'm not ready to forgive you yet. I understand. But I'm willing to try, to see if we can build something new, not what we had before. That's gone. But maybe something better. I'll take it." Luca touched her face gently. "However long it takes, Elena. I'm not going anywhere." The twins' 4th birthday arrived in late May. Elena and Luca threw a party at the beach, just a small gathering with Claire and Ray, a few kids from preschool, and Marco's insistence on a dinosaur cake while Lily wanted butterflies. They compromised with a cake that had both, which delighted the twins and looked like a sugar-fueled fever dream. Luca had asked Elena privately if it was time to tell them. "They're asking why you're around so much," he said. "Why you have your own key to the apartment. Marco asked if you were going to be his daddy." Elena's heart had clenched. "What did you say?" "I said we'd talk about it together, you and me and them." So after the party, after the other kids had gone home and Claire and Ray had taken the leftover cake, Elena and Luca sat on the beach with Marco and Lily between them. "We want to talk to you about something important," Elena started. "About Mr. Luca and why he's been spending so much time with us." "Because he likes us?" Lily offered. "Yes, baby. He likes you very much, but there's more to it than that." Elena looked at Luca, who nodded encouragement. "Mr. Luca is your daddy, your father. That's why you have the same eyes as him." Marco squinted at Luca. "You're my daddy?" "I am, if that's okay with you." Where were you before? Out of the mouths of children. Elena had known this question would come, had prepared for it, but it still hurt. I was far away, Luca said carefully, making a really big mistake. I wasn't there when you were born, and I should have been. I'm sorry about that. Why weren't you there? Lily asked. Because I was scared. I didn't know how to be a daddy, and I thought it would be easier to stay away than to try and mess up. But I was wrong. Being away from you was the hardest thing I've ever done, even though I didn't know you yet. Marco considered this with the seriousness of a 4-year-old philosopher. But you're here now. I'm here now, and I'm going to stay here. Is that okay? Can you teach me more about trucks? Luca laughed, the sound breaking with emotion. I can teach you everything I know about trucks, which isn't much, but we'll learn together. Okay, you can be my daddy then. Lily was quieter, processing. Finally, she said, If you're our daddy, does that mean you love Mama? Elena and Luca exchanged glances. Yes, Luca said. I love your mama very much. And you're not going away again? Never, I promise. Lily nodded, satisfied. Okay, but Mama loves us more. She absolutely does, Luca agreed. No one could love you more than your mama. I'm just hoping there's room for me, too. There's room, Marco announced, but you have to share the good pillow. And just like that, it was settled, in the way that things are simple for children who haven't learned yet that life is complicated. They had a daddy now. He was going to stay. That was all they needed to know. That night, after the twins were asleep, Luca sat on Elena's couch and looked at the photos she had hung on the wall. 3 years of Marco and Lily growing up, all the moments he'd missed. I can't get those years back, he said quietly. No, you can't. But I can be here for all the years ahead. Elena sat beside him. It's not going to be easy, Luca. They're going to ask harder questions as they get older, about why you weren't there, about what you do for work, about your world and how it intersects with theirs. I know, and I'll answer honestly, age-appropriately, but honestly. He turned to face her. I'm also making changes, real ones. I've started transitioning out of the illegal operations. It'll take time. You can't just walk away from that kind of business, but within 2 years, everything I do will be legitimate. 2 years is a long time. It's the best I can do without getting myself or others killed. Some of this requires careful extraction. He took her hand. But I'm doing it. For them. For you. For the life I want to build here. What about Kozlov and whoever else might come after you? Kozlov and I have an understanding. As long as I honor our agreement, he has no reason to touch you. And I'm making it known in my world that my family is completely off limits, that anyone who even looks at you wrong will face consequences they can't imagine. Elena should have been disturbed by that, should have argued that violence wasn't the answer, but she'd seen what happened when Luca's world touched her children, had spent a week hiding in a safe house, terrified and helpless. Keep us safe, she said. Whatever it takes, just keep us safe. I will. I swear it. 6 months later, Luca proposed, not with a grand gesture or an expensive ring, though the ring was beautiful, a simple band with 3 small stones representing the 3 people who'd changed his life. He proposed on a Tuesday evening while they were making dinner and the twins were fighting over who got to set the table. Marry me, he said, so quietly Elena almost missed it over Marco's insistence that he should get the fork job. What? Marry me. Not because it's romantic or because it's what people do. Marry me because I want to legally bind myself to you and these kids in every way possible. Because I want the world to know you're mine and I'm yours. He abandoned the onions he'd been chopping. Because I love you. Because you're the best person I've ever known. Because I want to spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you. Elena stared at him. At this man who'd once told her to get rid of it, who now stood in her cramped kitchen with tears in his eyes, asking her to marry him while their children bickered in the background. The answer's yes, by the way, Luca added. I'm just waiting for you to actually say it. She laughed, crying at the same time. Yes, I'll marry you. Marco and Lily looked up from their argument. Why is Mama crying? Lily asked, concerned. Happy tears, baby, Elena managed. Your daddy just asked me to marry him. What's marry mean? Marco wanted to know. It means we're going to be a family, Luca said, pulling Elena close. Officially, forever. We're already a family, Lily pointed out with 4-year-old logic. You're right, but now we'll have papers that say so. The twins lost interest and went back to arguing about forks. Elena buried her face in Luca's shoulder and laughed until she couldn't breathe. This was her life now. Chaotic and complicated and nothing like what she'd planned. And absolutely perfect. They got married 3 months later in a simple ceremony on the beach. Claire cried. Ray walked Elena down the makeshift aisle. Marco and Lily served as ring bearers and managed to only lose 1 ring in the sand before the ceremony started. Luca's security team attended, dressed in suits and trying very hard to look like normal wedding guests. A few of his business associates came, the legitimate ones, along with half the town of Halcyon Bay. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, Marco shouted, "I object!" because he'd seen it in a movie and thought it was hilarious. Everyone laughed. Lily told him to be quiet. The ceremony continued. Luca's vows were simple. I promise to be the man you deserve, the father our children deserve, to protect you, honor you, and love you for the rest of my life. You saved me, Elena. In every way a person can be saved. Elena's vows were equally simple. I promise to trust you, even when it's hard, to build this life with you, day by day, to remind you, when you forget, that you're more than your past. You gave me the greatest gifts of my life. Now I'm giving you mine, my heart, my trust, my future. They kissed while the twins cheered and the waves crashed behind them. That night, after the reception, after putting 2 exhausted children to bed in their new house, a real house, with a yard and enough bedrooms for everyone, Elena and Luca sat on the porch and watched the stars. Do you think they'll remember? Elena asked. When they're older? The time before we were a family? Maybe, but it'll be distant. A story someone told them once. I hope so. I hope they remember this instead. The good parts. Luca pulled her close. We'll make sure there are enough good parts to fill a lifetime. 2 years later, Luca kept his promise. He'd systematically extricated himself from every illegal operation, transitioning completely into legitimate business. It had required careful negotiation, strategic partnerships, and more than a few tense conversations with people who didn't want to see him leave. But he'd done it. The empire that his father had built on fear and violence now ran on contracts and quarterly reports. It was smaller, less powerful in the traditional sense, but it was clean. Luca could sleep at night without wondering if he'd get a call about violence he'd caused, could pick up his children from school without scanning for threats, could build a life that didn't require constant vigilance. He started a foundation using his legitimate business profits, providing resources for single mothers, funding preschool programs, creating opportunities for people like Elena had been, people who just needed a chance. You're trying to make amends, Elena said when he showed her the paperwork. I'm trying to do better. There's a difference. Marco was 6 now, in 1st grade, reading at a 3rd grade level and obsessed with space. Lily was in kindergarten, quiet still but fiercely determined, with a gift for art that had her teachers talking about special programs. They knew their father had made mistakes, knew he'd worked in bad places doing bad things before they were born, but they also knew he'd changed, that he'd chosen them over everything else. That was enough. One evening, Elena found Luca in the twins' room, watching them sleep. She wrapped her arms around him from behind. What are you thinking about? She asked. About the day you told me you were pregnant, about what I said to you. Luca, I told you to get rid of it, 5 words that almost destroyed everything, and I think about what my life would be now if you'd listened, if you'd done what I asked. Elena tightened her hold. But I didn't. You didn't. You chose them over me, over money and security and every practical reason to do what I said. You chose them, and in doing that, you saved me too. I chose them because they were mine, because I loved them before I even met them. I know, and I'm grateful every single day that you were stronger than I was, that you saw what I couldn't. They stood in the doorway, watching their children breathe. Marco shifted in his sleep, reaching for his stuffed dinosaur. Lily mumbled something about purple paint. Do you have regrets? Elena asked. About leaving your old life? Not even for a second. That life was empty. This, he gestured at the room, the house, the life they'd built. This is everything. Elena leaned her head against his shoulder. Good answer. It's the truth. Outside, the ocean whispered against the shore. Inside, their children slept safely. And two people who'd found each other in the worst possible way had built something beautiful from the wreckage. The sentence that changed everything, get rid of it, I don't want a child, had nearly destroyed them all. But Elena had said no, had chosen love over fear, had built a life from nothing and refused to let anyone, even the father of her children, take that away. And Luca had learned, slowly and painfully, that power wasn't found in control or empires or fear. It was found in the choice to be better, to sacrifice everything for the people you loved, to transform from the man who pushed love away into the man who'd burned the world down to protect it. Neither of them could erase the past. The words spoken, the years lost, the mistakes made, but they could choose differently now. And they did, every single day. For Marco and Lily, who deserved parents who chose them first. For each other, learning to trust again after everything. For the future they were building together, imperfect, complicated, and absolutely worth fighting for. No one ran, no one hid, no one chose power over family again. For the first time in both their lives, the future wasn't ruled by fear. It was built by love. And that made all the difference.